Tonight we journey to a land of golden hills and endless lavender fields, a place where time slows down and love blooms quietly beneath the open sky. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the whispers of Provence carry you away. The train rumbled slowly to a stop, its whistle trailing off into the thick summer air. Isabel stepped down onto the small station platform, her suitcase rattling behind her on old, worn wheels. The village lay before her, a patchwork of terracotta rooftops, winding cobbled streets, and fields that shimmered purple and gold under the sinking sun. The scent of lavender wrapped around her like a welcome. She paused, just breathing it in. Lavender and something deeper. The heavy sweetness of ripe figs. The faint metallic tang of dust and stone warmed by the day's heat. Her driver, an elderly man named Jacques, waved from a battered car parked nearby. "Bienvenue, mademoiselle," he said with a soft smile. "Maison de Lune is waiting for you." The ride to the inn was slow, winding along dusty paths lined with ancient olive trees. Crickets sang in the dry grass. The world here seemed untouched by time. When they arrived, the inn took Isabel's breath away. Maison de Lune was a grand old stone house, its walls kissed by ivy and the gentle touch of time. White shutters framed every window, thrown open to the evening breeze. The front garden was a sea of lavender, buzzing with sleepy bees. Madame Larocque, the innkeeper, met her at the door, a small round woman with eyes like polished amber. "You look tired, ma chère," Madame said kindly, patting Isabel's hand. "Come inside. Rest. Here, we mend all broken things, even hearts." Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of rosemary and lemon oil. Her room was simple but beautiful. A big iron bed dressed in linen, a balcony overlooking the lavender fields, and an old writing desk tucked beneath a window. She set her suitcase down and walked slowly out onto the balcony. The sky was bleeding into twilight, pink and gold and indigo all at once. The lavender swayed below her, whispering secrets only the wind could understand. Isabel leaned on the railing and closed her eyes. For the first time in what felt like years, her heart did not race or ache or beg for more. It simply was. She breathed deep. She was home. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the open shutters, painting the room in soft gold. The distant hum of bees floated in through the window, along with the ever-present scent of lavender. Isabel stretched lazily in bed, her body sinking deeper into the cool linen sheets. No alarms, no meetings, no urgent emails, just the slow, delicious unraveling of time. After a long shower, scented with rosemary soap, she pulled on a simple linen dress, slipped her bare feet into worn sandals, and wandered outside. The garden greeted her like an old friend. Rows and rows of lavender swayed in the gentle breeze, bees tumbling clumsily from flower to flower. Beyond the garden, a great oak tree stood alone at the edge of a small meadow, its gnarled branches stretching wide like open arms. Drawn to its shade, Isabel wandered closer. That's when she saw him. A man leaned against the thick trunk, sketchbook balanced on his knee. He wore a loose white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms, and faded jeans dusted with earth. His hair was dark and unruly, kissed by the sun. A light beard shadowed his strong jaw. He looked up as she approached, and their eyes met. A slow collision of gazes that felt almost physical. For a moment, neither spoke. The world seemed to narrow, the buzzing bees and whispering lavender fading into a soft, pulsing silence. Then he smiled, a small, knowing thing that crinkled the corners of his stormy grey eyes. "Bonjour," he said, voice low and textured like velvet. "I hope I am not intruding on your walk." Isabel shook her head, finding her voice somewhere between her ribs. "No, not at all. It's beautiful here." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, feeling oddly shy. He closed his sketchbook gently. "It is," he agreed, stepping closer, the sunlight catching on his lashes. "It's my favourite place to think and to draw." He hesitated, then offered his hand. "Etienne." "Isabel," she said, sliding her fingers into his. His hand was warm, calloused, and lingered for a moment longer than necessary. "You are staying at Maison de Lune?" he asked, a twinkle in his eye. "Madame Larocque has a way of drawing lost souls to her doorstep." Isabel laughed, the sound light and musical in the morning air. "Maybe I am a little lost," she admitted. "Good," he said, smile deepening. "The lost often find the best things." They sat beneath the oak tree, talking of small things, the weather, the beauty of the fields, favourite books, dreams left half-finished. His voice was a balm, deep, rich and slow, each word unspooling like silk. There was no rush, no expectations, just two people sharing the same warm patch of earth, breathing the same lavender-sweet air. When she finally stood to leave, Etienne brushed a speck of lavender from her hair. His fingers lingered near her temple, a soft, almost reverent touch. "Come tomorrow," he said, voice low. "I'll show you the hidden places the tourists never find." Their eyes held for a heartbeat too long. Then she turned, heart fluttering strangely, and made her way back to Maison de Lune. Behind her, the lavender whispered secrets she was not yet ready to hear. The next morning dawned even warmer than the last. The sky stretched pale and cloudless above the endless fields, and the air was already heavy with the thick, sweet perfume of lavender and sun-baked stone. Isabel stood on her balcony, feeling the sunlight kiss her bare shoulders. Her heart fluttered with a quiet excitement, like a bird testing its wings. She chose a soft, flowing sundress today, cream-coloured linen that brushed her knees with every step, and set off barefoot across the garden. Etienne was already waiting beneath the oak tree, sketchbook tucked under his arm, a lazy smile playing at his lips. "Bonjour, Isabel," he said, voice a slow caress. "You came." "I said I would," she answered, feeling suddenly breathless under the weight of his gaze. He extended a hand, palm open, inviting. "Come. Today I show you the true heart of Provence." Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had always fit together, and he led her down a narrow path she hadn't noticed before, a trail half hidden by wild grass and brambles. They walked in easy silence, the world shrinking to the soft crunch of their steps, the rustle of lavender, and the occasional brush of his arm against hers. Every small touch sent little shivers across her skin. Finally, they emerged into a hidden clearing, a secret garden walled in by ancient cypress trees. Wild roses tangled up the trunks, spilling petals like pink and red confetti. In the centre stood an old stone fountain, moss creeping up its sides, the water whispering secrets to no one in particular. "No tourists find this place," Etienne said, voice hushed, as though speaking too loudly would shatter the spell. "It's ours, for now." Isabel wandered toward the fountain, trailing her fingers through the cool water. The garden buzzed with unseen life. Bees, dragonflies, the far-off call of a dove. She closed her eyes, tilting her face up to the sun. When she opened them again, Etienne was standing close, very close. The lazy warmth in his eyes had deepened into something else now, something slower, heavier. "You belong here," he said quietly. "You don't even know it yet, but you do." Her heart stumbled in her chest. The air between them thickened, humming with a low electric pull. Etienne reached out, tucking a stray wisp of hair behind her ear with a gentleness that made her ache. His fingers brushed the curve of her cheek, lingering there, just long enough. He leaned closer, his breath a soft warmth against her skin. For a moment, Isabel thought he would kiss her. She found herself swaying toward him, her body moving before her mind could catch up. But he only smiled, slow, wicked, promising, and stepped back. "Come," he said, voice rougher now. "There's more I want to show you." He turned and walked deeper into the garden, and Isabel followed, pulse thrumming like the wings of a trapped butterfly. The day was just beginning, and somehow she knew. So was something far more dangerous and far more beautiful. By the time the sun began to slip behind the hills, the hidden garden had transformed into something even more magical. The fading light painted everything in gold and violet, and a hush seemed to fall over the world as if holding its breath. Etienne spread out an old woven blanket near the fountain. He opened a wicker basket, fresh baguette, creamy goat cheese, ripe figs, a bottle of deep red wine. "A proper Provençal dinner," he said with a crooked smile, handing her a glass. They sat side by side, legs stretched out, the blanket warm beneath them. Isabel felt deliciously lazy, tipsy from the wine, the heat, and Etienne's nearness. As they ate, they talked about everything and nothing. Their childhood dreams, the books that made them cry, the songs that could still bring them to their knees. The stars blinked to life above them, one by one, a soft, endless sea. At some point, maybe it was the third glass of wine, or maybe it was just inevitable. Etienne brushed her hand with his. Neither of them moved away. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, his fingers threaded through hers. The simple touch made Isabel's heart stutter. Silence fell between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with possibility. The night grew cooler, and Etienne slipped off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. "You're trembling," he said softly. "I'm not cold," she whispered back, voice catching. Their eyes locked. The air around them crackled. Etienne reached out, cupping her cheek in his calloused hand, his thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip. "May I?" he asked, his voice a low, reverent murmur. Isabel nodded, barely breathing. He kissed her then, slow, searching, as if he had all the time in the world and intended to use every second of it. The world narrowed to the soft pressure of his lips, the scratch of stubble against her skin, the faint taste of wine and longing. She melted into him, into the kiss, into the night itself. It was not a kiss meant to conquer or claim. It was a kiss meant to say, "I see you." When they finally broke apart, Isabel rested her forehead against his, both of them breathing hard. For a long, sweet moment, they simply stayed like that. Two souls caught between the earth and the stars. "Stay," Etienne whispered against her hair. "Please, stay with me tonight." The words weren't rushed, they weren't demanding. They were simply an invitation, a doorway held open, waiting for her to walk through. and deep in her heart, Isabel already knew. She had stepped across that threshold the moment she arrived in Provence. Now there was no going back. The garden held its breath as Isabel nodded, her heart drumming a rhythm only Etienne could hear. He rose to his feet, offering her his hand. She slipped her fingers into his, feeling the heat of his palm against hers, grounding her, tethering her to this moment, this man. Together they crossed the mossy stones back toward the cottage, the night wrapping around them like a velvet shawl. The wooden door creaked as Etienne pushed it open, and a rush of warm, honeyed air greeted them from inside. The scent of burning lavender and aged wood. He didn't let go of her hand as he led her inside. Instead, he tightened his grip slightly, protective, reverent, as if afraid she might slip away like a dream upon waking. Inside, the small cottage glowed with the soft golden flicker of candles scattered along shelves and windowsills. The fireplace crackled low in the corner, casting dancing shadows across the room. Etienne turned to face her, his thumb brushing along the inside of her wrist. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice low, almost hoarse. Isabel looked up at him, at the uncertainty flickering behind his usual confidence. It made her heart ache in the most beautiful way. In answer, she stepped closer, slipping her arms around his waist, resting her cheek against his chest. The steady thud of his heart beneath her ear was answer enough for both of them. Etienne exhaled a shuddering breath, his arms coming up to hold her tightly. They stood there for a long while, just breathing each other in, letting the world narrow down to the shared rhythm between them. When he finally tilted her chin up to kiss her again, it was different from before. Slower, deeper. A kiss that spoke of promises made in silence and fulfilled in touch. Isabel melted into him, her body moulding perfectly against his, her fingers tangled in the fabric of his shirt, clinging to him as if afraid he might vanish. Etienne's hands slid up her back, gentle yet certain, as if memorizing every curve, every sigh. Without breaking the kiss, he walked her backward toward the hearth, their steps clumsy, desperate, full of laughter, muffled against lips and skin. The old couch creaked as they tumbled onto it, tangled together in a heap of limbs and laughter. Isabel pulled back, breathless, cheeks flushed. Etienne smiled up at her, a rare boyish grin that made her heart stutter. "Stay right there," he whispered, voice roughened with emotion. He rose and disappeared into a small adjoining room, returning moments later with a thick, well-worn quilt in his arms. He tossed it over the couch with a flourish, then gently gathered her into his arms, laying her down atop the makeshift bed he'd created. The quilt smelled faintly of pine and sunshine, like something that had soaked up summers past. Etienne stretched out beside her, propping himself up on one elbow so he could trace the line of her jaw with a feather-light touch. "You're more beautiful than any sunset," he murmured. Isabel blushed, laughing softly. "You must say that to all the women who stumble into your garden," she teased. Etienne's smile faded into something more serious. "Only you," he said simply. The air between them grew heavy again, charged with something electric yet tender. He lowered his head, brushing his lips against her temple, her cheekbone, the corner of her mouth. Each kiss was a question, and her answering sighs were the only answer he needed. Slowly, carefully, he explored her as if committing her to memory. His hands skimmed along her arms, her waist, tracing the path the moonlight made along her skin. When he finally kissed the hollow of her throat, Isabel gasped, arching into him instinctively. Etienne chuckled softly, a low, delicious sound that vibrated against her skin. "Sensitive there, chérie," he whispered. His mouth trailed lower, leaving a warm, aching trail of kisses down to her collarbone. Isabel tangled her fingers in his hair, holding him close, guiding him where she needed him most. There was no rush between them, no frantic, fevered passion, only an exquisite slowness, a savouring, a worship. Etienne's hands moved under the hem of her blouse, fingers stroking the bare skin of her waist, sending shivers cascading down her spine. With her help, the fabric lifted over her head and fell away, forgotten. Etienne drew back slightly, just to look at her, his gaze reverent. "Magnifique," he whispered, almost to himself. He kissed her again, deeper this time, his body pressing more firmly against hers. Isabel could feel every inch of him, the heat of his desire matching her own. Their movements became a slow, sensual dance, bodies exploring, mouths seeking, hands mapping out new constellations of pleasure across heated skin. Each sigh, each moan, each whispered word spun a new thread between them, weaving a tapestry of need and tenderness. The fire crackled beside them, casting golden light over Tangled. The dawn was still hours away, but neither Etienne nor Isabel felt the weight of time pressing down on them. In the hush between midnight and morning, there was only the soft sound of breathing, the occasional sigh of contentment, and the sweet ache of knowing this moment was real. Isabel stirred against Etienne's chest, her fingers tracing idle patterns across the smooth skin of his abdomen. He was still half asleep, his arms cradling her possessively, as if even in dreams he refused to let her go. She smiled against his skin, savouring the way he felt against her. Solid, warm, safe. "Are you awake?" she whispered, her breath stirring the fine hairs on his chest. Etienne made a low, pleased sound deep in his throat, the kind of sound a man makes when he is exactly where he wants to be. Only for you," he murmured, his voice husky with sleep. Isabel lifted her head, propping herself up on one elbow to study his face in the faint glow of the dying fire. He looked almost boyish in sleep, his dark lashes resting against his cheekbones, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, a soft vulnerability that made her heart squeeze. Without thinking, she leaned down and pressed a kiss to the corner of his mouth. Etienne's eyes fluttered open, dark and heavy with affection. "Stealing kisses now, are we?" he teased, his hand sliding up her bare spine to tangle in her hair. "Always," she whispered, kissing him again. Slow, unhurried. Their mouths moved together lazily, as if they had all the time in the world, and for once, perhaps, they did. He deepened the kiss, rolling her beneath him, the quilt slipping down to pool around their hips. The cool air kissed her bare skin, but she only shivered with anticipation. Etienne smiled against her mouth, a slow, wicked smile that made her toes curl. "Stay with me," he whispered between kisses. "I'm already here," she murmured back. "No, Isabel, stay longer. Stay always," he said, his forehead pressing to hers. The weight of his words settled between them, heavier than anything they had spoken so far. Isabel felt the enormity of it crash over her like a wave, not frightening, but profound. "Always is a long time," she breathed. "Not long enough," he countered, his fingers tracing along her jawline. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, tears she didn't fully understand. Was it fear? Hope? Joy? Maybe it was all three, swirling together in the fragile golden light of this new beginning. She answered him the only way she could, by pulling him closer, by pressing her body to his, by letting him feel everything she couldn't yet say aloud. And he understood. Of course he did. Etienne made love to her again, slower this time, as if he had all the time in the world to memorize her, to worship her, to pour every unspoken promise into her skin. Their bodies moved together in a languid rhythm, matching the sway of the wind in the lavender fields outside. There was no rush, no end, only endless becoming. When at last they lay spent and sated in each other's arms, the first whispers of dawn began to creep into the sky, soft lavender and gold bleeding into the indigo darkness. Etienne rose and tugged on a pair of loose linen pants, moving to the window. Isabel watched him from the couch, her body deliciously sore, her heart unbearably full. He looked out across the fields, his silhouette bathed in the pale light of morning. You should see it in full bloom, he said over his shoulder, a boyish excitement in his voice. When is that? She asked, wrapping the quilt tighter around herself. Soon, he said. June, when the world turns purple and the air is thick with it. I could show you if you stay. Isabel bit her lip, fighting a smile. She knew she should be cautious. She barely knew this man, this place, this life that had opened its arms so suddenly, so sweetly, and yet, wasn't that the way magic worked? Not through logic, not through caution, but through leaping, wild, breathless, and free. I want to see it, she said finally. Etienne's face broke into a grin so dazzling it stole her breath. He crossed the room in 3 strides and scooped her up, quilt and all, spinning her around until she was laughing helplessly. You've made me the happiest man in Provence, he declared, setting her down with a flourish. Provence? She teased, catching her breath. What about the rest of the world? One dream at a time, chérie, he said, brushing a kiss to her forehead. They spent the rest of the morning wrapped around each other, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. Childhood dreams, favourite songs, the shape of clouds, the taste of honey, every word, every glance, every brush of skin felt sacred. Later, Etienne made coffee on the old wood-burning stove, the rich aroma filling the little cottage. They sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a shared blanket, sipping from chipped mugs and watching the sun climb higher over the lavender fields. Birds trilled in the trees, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked. Life, simple and perfect. "Tell me something true," Isabel said, resting her head on his shoulder. Etienne thought for a moment, then said, "I was waiting for you long before I ever knew your name." Isabel closed her eyes, letting the truth of it sink deep into her bones. "Then here's my truth," she whispered. "I think I've finally come home." They sat there until the coffee cooled, until the sun warmed their faces, until the whole world seemed to slow down just to make room for them. And somewhere, deep inside, Isabel knew this was only the beginning. Their story was just starting to unfold. One whispered promise, one stolen kiss, one lavender-scented morning at a time. Later that afternoon, the world outside the cottage was soaked in the kind of golden light that only happens once a day, just before sunset, when every blade of grass, every petal, every breath seems touched by magic. Isabel leaned against the porch railing, her hair a mess of lazy curls, her skin kissed by the sun. She watched Etienne down by the small stone well, filling a metal bucket. There was something about the way he moved, so unhurried, so sure, that made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. It had been only a day, maybe less, and yet she felt as if she'd known him across lifetimes. He glanced up and caught her watching. Instead of pretending he hadn't noticed, he grinned, that boyish, devastating smile, and called up to her. "Come down here, city girl. There's something you need to see." Isabel laughed, the sound of it surprising even herself. When was the last time she'd laughed like this? Open, easy, real. She wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. She still wore only his shirt from the night before, and padded down the path, barefoot, feeling the warm earth beneath her toes. When she reached him, Etienne set the bucket down and took her hand, pulling her close. "Look," he said, pointing up. She followed his gaze. Above them, hundreds of tiny golden insects danced in the dying light, their wings catching the sun like living jewels. "Fireflies," she breathed, her voice filled with wonder. "Not yet," he said. "These are bees finishing their last dance of the day. Soon, when the sun dips, the fireflies will come." He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her skin. "You're beautiful," he said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to say. Isabel felt heat bloom in her cheeks, but she didn't look away. She stepped closer instead, sliding her arms around his waist, resting her cheek against his chest. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, feeling the world turn slowly around them. "It's peaceful here," she said, her voice muffled against him. "It's life," Etienne said. "Real life, not the rush, not the noise, just being, just belonging." Isabel closed her eyes. Belonging. How long had it been since she'd felt anything even close? Maybe never. Etienne tipped her chin up and kissed her, slow and sweet, like a promise made under a sky full of endless stars. When they finally pulled apart, the sun had sunk lower, and the first true fireflies began to appear, blinking their tiny lights across the fields like fallen stars. "Come with me," he said, taking her hand again. They walked hand in hand through the fields, the tall lavender brushing against their bare legs, the scent intoxicating in the warm evening air. Etienne led her up a small hill where an old wooden bench overlooked the valley. They sat together, side by side, watching the sky change from gold to pink to deep, endless indigo. The fireflies swirled around them, tiny flickers of magic against the growing darkness. "Tell me a secret," Etienne said, his voice a low rumble in the hush. Isabel smiled. "A secret? Something you've never told anyone." She thought for a moment, tracing a finger over the back of his hand. "I used to dream about running away," she said finally. "From what?" "From everything," she whispered. "From the noise, the pressure, the expectations. I used to sit at my window and wish I could just disappear into a place like this. Somewhere nobody needed anything from me. Somewhere I could just breathe." Etienne kissed the top of her head, a silent benediction. "You're not running now?" he said. "No," she agreed softly. "I think I'm finally arriving." He squeezed her hand. "Good," he said, "because I don't plan on letting you go." The wind picked up slightly, tugging at their hair, whispering secrets only they could hear. Isabel leaned into him, her heart beating slow and steady, matching his. They sat there until the stars appeared one by one, scattering themselves across the sky in a careless, breathtaking tapestry. "This," Etienne said, his voice reverent. "This is how every day should end, wrapped in someone you love under a sky full of stars." Isabel nodded, feeling tears prick at her eyes again. Not from sadness, from the sheer, overwhelming beauty of it all. "I could get used to this," she said, her voice catching. "Then do," Etienne said simply. "Stay. Let's build something here, something real. You and me." Isabel turned to look at him fully. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no fear, only certainty. And maybe that was what she needed most. Not someone to chase her, not someone to fix her, but someone who already saw her, all of her, and simply said, "Stay." "Okay," she whispered, her voice breaking into a smile. "Okay." He kissed her again, and the world spun a little slower, a little sweeter. Above them, the stars burned brighter, as if the universe itself was blessing their beginning. And somewhere deep inside, Isabel knew this was more than a chance encounter. This was destiny, the kind that doesn't shout or demand, the kind that waits patiently until you are ready to hear it whisper your name in the lavender-scented breeze. The storm had passed some time before dawn. Only a gentle drizzle remained now, tapping lightly on the windows like a lullaby, easing its way into memory. The sky was pale grey, kissed with soft light, as though even the sun was reluctant to disturb the dream that had unfolded in the quiet cabin overnight. He stirred first. The man's arm was still draped across her waist, fingers splayed protectively over her hip, as if he feared she might dissolve into mist if he let go. Her back was pressed firmly to his chest, their bodies still moulded together beneath the thick wool blanket. Her breathing was deep and slow, her hair tousled, face serene. He smiled, letting his nose brush the curve of her neck. She smelled of lavender, rain, and something purely, impossibly feminine. He didn't move, didn't want to. If the world could stop right here, with her in his arms, he'd have no complaints. But she felt his breath, and a low, sleepy hum escaped her. "Still here?" she murmured, voice husky and silken. Where else would I go? He whispered into her ear. This is exactly where I belong. She turned just enough to meet his gaze. Her eyes were lazy with sleep and affection, the kind that asked nothing but promised everything. You could have vanished with the storm, she teased, like some beautiful hallucination. He chuckled, brushing his thumb across her cheekbone. If I'm a hallucination, then let's stay in the dream. Their lips met in a slow, languid kiss. Not urgent, not desperate, but full of a deep knowing, a shared truth. The kind of kiss that whispered, "We're still here, and you're mine, and thank you all at once." Outside, the trees shimmered with droplets, and a low fog hung lazily over the landscape. Inside, time had no meaning. They rose eventually, but only because their stomachs reminded them that passion, while sustaining in one way, didn't quite replace food. Wrapped in flannel and contented smiles, they moved around the kitchen in sync, chopping, pouring, laughing over shared glances and brushes of fingertips. He made coffee strong and black. She made eggs and toast. And when they sat to eat, it was side by side, legs tangled beneath the table, their bare feet touching. "I don't want this to end," she said softly, buttering a slice of toast. "This weekend, you, the rain, all of it." "It doesn't have to," he replied, setting his mug down. "There's more rain coming, more mornings, more us, if you want that." Her eyes searched his. No games, no masks, just a raw vulnerability that made her heartbeat flutter. "I do," she whispered. "I want all of it." He leaned in, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Then you've got it." They didn't need to rush. There was no urgency to define what this was or where it was going. They had already found something rare: intimacy without expectation, connection without fear. The rest of the morning passed in a quiet rhythm, a shared shower that became a cascade of laughter and steam, tender touches, playful splashes. He washed her hair like it was sacred. She kissed his back as if he were made of stories she wanted to read again and again. Later, wrapped in nothing but towels and the scent of wet pine from outside, they curled up on the couch, listening to the last raindrops fall like secrets from the sky. "I've never felt so at peace," she whispered. "So held." He didn't respond with words. He didn't need to. He simply pulled her closer, kissed the top of her head, and let the silence between them bloom like a new beginning. The cabin, still glowing from the inside, stood as a witness to something soft and rare. Not just a night of passion, but the birth of something deeper. Not a fling, not a fantasy, a beginning. And as the rain cleared, leaving the world damp and reborn, they sat in each other's arms, not chasing sleep anymore, but letting the peace they'd created carry them into the slow unfolding of the day.